Hey there everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist. Welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first two novels, one the start of a series, one a standalone. Now on my channel I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of all writing, and that's the psychology behind the characters, behind the world, because in my mind that's what makes a world and a character feel real and feel, well, that's what connects me to a story and a character, is the psychology. So that's kind of the angle I like to take when I talk about pretty much anything on my channel. So today I want to talk about a trope. It was actually suggested. My tongue is not working today. And so I really wanted to kind of dig into it a little bit, and that is the trope of unrequited love. So what is unrequited love? That is essentially where you have a character who has fallen in love with another character and that character does not return their feelings. So this trope kind of gets a bad rap because most of the time the person who has the unrequited love becomes this almost stalker kind of character. And I think that the issue isn't so much the unrequited love, it is the degree of how the character is handling it. That's really what this boils down to. Because almost everybody is going to encounter unrequited love at some point in their life. It's just going to happen. We're attracted to people for different reasons, and sometimes those people do not return those feelings. And that could be for any number of reasons. It could be that they don't feel the connection. It could be that they are looking for different traits in a partner. It could be a bunch of different things. But you're still left with having to handle the emotions that are left behind. So one of the things we suggest when people are dealing with unrequited love is, first and foremost, is this a pattern? Because usually if someone is seeing a therapist for unrequited love, it's usually because it hits them very hard. And most of the time that means that they've probably gone through this before. And like I said, this is something that everybody is going to encounter at some point in their life. But how you handle it is really what comes into play here. And what a lot of books and movies do is they like to have the character handle it poorly because that creates trauma, and that's good for stories and books. But that's not always how it goes. Usually what happens in movies and books is the person who has been rejected, instead of doing what we call processing and letting go of their feelings, they start to process and they get stuck in a cycle. So they want to fix whatever it is that's making them be rejected. And if it's something about themselves, sometimes they go on an extreme to fix, quote unquote, fix themselves, whatever the trait is. So, if the person said, hey, I'm looking for someone that's more ambition or whatever, this person might go off on these super impulsive things just to show, hey, I do have ambition. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Will you like me now? Will you return my feelings now? And if it's a case where they don't necessarily have something they can fix, then they develop very, what I call egocentric vision, which is basically where their thoughts are on, this is the person for me, this is the person I love, I need to get them to reciprocate that love. But in doing so, they kind of lose their empathy, in that they don't picture the other person's point of view. And what if I was in this situation and someone kept pressing themselves on me to return a feeling I did not have? And that's what usually leads to the obsession, is this cycling feeling of, I have to fix this, I have to get them to return my feelings, etc., etc., etc. And it feeds itself. So what in therapy, what would you do? Well, first thing, like I said, is just to process the emotion. And sometimes that involves
Just taking the emotion and letting yourself feel it, letting yourself feel sad, letting yourself feel angry, letting yourself feel rejected, and then just moving forward and finding a new goal, finding something you can focus your activity on, finding something you can really put your emphasis towards, and take this energy, this sadness, this anger, all this stuff, because it's all energy, and finding a new place to direct it. So one of the things that generally happens when you have someone who is having a hard time with rejection is usually they display what we call very rigid thinking, in that they have a hard time with adaptation. So when something goes wrong, they have a hard time adapting and figuring out a new path. And that's why rejection is so hard for them, because it's essentially a deviation from what their plan was. And most of the time that produces anxiety. It produces, it kind of triggers low self-esteem, kind of racing thoughts, that kind of thing. And so that's why, that's kind of the route that a lot of movies and books take with this. However, I wouldn't mind seeing someone effectively process rejection, because it's going to happen. I mean, it happens all the time. And I've kind of talked about what we do in therapy when someone feels rejected. And it's kind of the same thing, even if you're not in therapy, in that, like I said, that adaptation, that ability to be flexible is kind of the important aspect. So generally, if someone is rejecting your advances, the idea is that you have enough empathy to respect that they are a human being with their own likes, dislikes, etc. And it's not necessarily about you. It may just be that there is no chemistry. I've talked about this before. There's lots of different things that a rejection could be. So what would I like to see in a character that is going through rejection in a book or a movie? Well, first and foremost, just acceptance of, okay, this relationship, the other person is not interested. And I put a lot of emphasis on acceptance, because that is really the hardest part with processing any kind of rejection, is just acceptance of it. Because as a general rule, if it's something we want and it's something we desire, we want to figure out a way to make it work. We want to figure out, okay, what's something I can do to make this work? And we want to do something to change the outcome, so it's something that we like. We don't like to be disappointed as a general rule. But accepting that emotion and recognizing that I may not like this emotion, I may not like this outcome, but I can accept that that's what's happening. And that's what we call radical acceptance, which is basically, I don't have to like what's happening, but I have to accept the reality of it. And that's really the major step in preventing that cycling from happening, is just, this is what it is. I don't have to like it, but I do have to accept that at this moment in time, this is what's happening. And then you kind of go through a grieving process. It's normal to be upset and angry and sad when a relationship that you felt was there you find out it's not there. Because a lot of times, with the difference between unrequited love and a relationship that just doesn't work out, is that a relationship that doesn't work out at one point was a relationship. There was a connection, and there is this process of essentially grieving what you once had and is now gone. With unrequited love, there was never a relationship to begin with, or it wasn't the type of relationship that the person wanted. And so the grieving is a little different, in that you're not necessarily grieving something you had. You're grieving something you wanted and can't have, if that makes any sense. So it works very similar because you still go through, you know, the denial, the anger, the bargaining, all that fun stuff. You go through all that still. But the difference is you're essentially grieving something that only existed in your head. And I think that can be interesting in a book or a story. But I do think that books and movies and stuff have really overplayed the unrequited lover becoming like a serial killer or whatnot. Now, does that happen? On occasion, yeah, it can. I'm not saying it can't. But the amount that it happens in movies and books is astronomically blown out of proportion. Most people, when faced with a relationship and they realize that there is no relationship or it's not a relationship that they want, cope with it pretty well, usually. I mean, it's sad and it's something that nobody likes to go through, but they generally cope with it pretty well. So I'd like to see more of that, of just like people grieving the fact that this isn't something that's going to work out for them, but then they redirect that energy and find a new goal for themselves and they move on. Because really, you get in trouble when you get caught in that cycle. And if you find something new to focus your energy on, that tends to not happen. So that's just a little bit on unrequited love. It's obviously a lot more complicated than that. There's different types of unrequited love, and they can all affect on how you process it. But that's just a basic version. So I hope you guys found this interesting. Thanks for the suggestion. I think this was a fun topic to talk about. And you guys probably noticed that I changed glasses and outfits midway through this video because I got half of it recorded and then I didn't have time to finish it the same day. So I finished recording it the next day. So I hope you guys found this interesting. As always, if you have comments or suggestions, please leave them below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. I obviously take suggestions, so if there's something in psychology or writing you want me to talk about, let me know. I'll be glad to do it. If you want to make sure you don't miss whenever I upload, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified whenever a new video goes up. I try to do up to 2 videos a week, although I add more if I can. And until next time, I hope you guys stay safe, take care, and have a good one.